Richard, thanks very much for your time. Your presentation talked a lot about the need for existing businesses to be able to evolve to meet the changes that are happening in the marketplace around them. And you gave examples of how some have not necessarily evolved in the right direction. I'm curious to know though, is it possible for companies which have been doing something the same way for so long to truly adapt in the right way, or do they need to keep almost breaking themselves in order to eventually find the way forward?
Well, I think that one of the biggest challenges that we face, not just in digital media, but in business in general, is the concept of culture change. And a great example of that would be General Motors. General Motors, which is now bankrupt in the United States, held on to their policy of building big giant SUVs because in their opinion, that was a profit center. They made $10,000 per car, whereas Toyota only made $500 per Prius. So why would we trade that business model? What they didn't realize is that Toyota wasn't selling Prius. Toyota had rebranded themselves as a technology company. And it was that perception on behalf of all the users that Toyota was leading the green revolution, leading the technology revolution that transformed the industry and put Toyota on top of General Motors. So it's not really about the object, the widget, the service. It's about the perception behind those things and how to translate your brand and translate your belief system, not just in monetizing content, selling CDs, for example, in the music industry, but looking at all the meta strategies around how to monetize that and lead a brand revolution around your sector.
One of the thoughts that's come out quite a lot today is the need to be listening to your customers. But if you've got customers that number in the millions who all want an individual customized experience, how can a large company which has been used to doing one thing the same way for so long possibly be able to adapt that or even tease out the themes that will be relevant to their own future?
Well, I think earlier you saw the presentation from Ben Self, who Blue State Digital, his company, did the Barack Obama campaign. They had feedback from millions and millions of people. What they were able to quickly do is to categorize that feedback into general bins of ideas and then respond through blogging or direct commentary to the topics that were the most important or the most asked questions. We're starting to see a very transparent sort of openness around CEO blogging, for example, where they should address the kinds of feedback that they're getting, not on a one-to-one basis, because that's with millions of users or millions of consumers next to impossible, but there are themes that emerge from that feedback, and it's important to address those themes in a very transparent and open way.
How do you go about doing that then in such a way as you can give it a good honest try but without exposing your mistakes to the public in such a way? Because it seems that if you listen to the Guardian examples, they were doing lots of little things and some of them would work and some of them wouldn't, and they could get away with it as long as they kept it small. For a lot larger companies like music companies, a change in model is a very, very big bet, and to change a model and get it wrong as they have done, will leave them all with egg on their faces.
Well, I think you have to parse that into two categories. Brands that are tarnished and brands that have the ability to reinvent themselves. If it's a tarnished brand, it's a much more difficult process. If it's a brand that needs to translate themselves into new areas or new thought processes, people are interested in that. And I think people are willing to forgive. I think people really love the idea of an apology. I think we've seen many examples of, say, celebrities who've gotten in trouble, Britney Spears, for example, who've come back and been very open and honest with the press and said, I'm sorry, this is what happened, I'm going to clean my act up. And people are behind that. They love the idea of honesty, and they're willing to give companies or individuals a chance. But if you see the sort of the idea of brands who want to camouflage their problems and not admit to those problems, that's where you see the population drawing back and not supporting them.
It's interesting actually, that's almost become a PR strategy, that you do go out and get busted for drink driving and then apologise, and it's a really good way to get on the cover of a weekly magazine in a fashion.
Right.
But
so it's not a bad thing. Dissent is not a bad thing. It's how you handle it and how you position. And I think it's an opportunity for a change.
A lot of today has been about media, and I wouldn't mind asking you about a couple of different media propositions. One being newspapers in particular in the US are having a very hard time at the moment. There's an argument that says a lot of what's happening with newspapers is their own fault and they took on too much debt and they can't service their debt and so forth. There's another argument that says that they have a longer term problem, which is a systemic change in consumer behaviour. I mean, what would your advice be in going out to talk to a newspaper today about how it can rectify its position and survive into the future?
Well, I think it's looking at basics. It's really not the medium, it's the message.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Fairfax Digital is a great example of a company who's really embraced how to maintain the message, but translate that message across all these new platforms out there. Is it an automatic fix? No. There's going to be some tough years here where the old business models have to sort of fade out. But if you don't have a Facebook strategy, a MySpace strategy, a YouTube strategy, a social network strategy by now, that's a problem.
I kind of get the impression, though, for a lot of these companies, the new strategy is going to take a long time to make money. And especially as we see newspapers go online, they make a lot less money online. The New York Times, for example, makes only, I think, less than 20% of its revenue from online, which is the growth area, but may never be as profitable as offline. And how do you actually bridge that gap? Or do you just accept that you're going to be a much smaller company in future?
There's not an easy answer to that.
Mm-hmm.
I think diversification is certainly a component of that. I think looking at application is another version of that.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of monetizing, again, meta strategies where you try and build revenue around the consumer experience, add value to the consumer. Right now, we're still stuck in the old model, which is I have a newspaper, it's got stories in it, and I'm going to put that online. It's really not about that. It's about replacing what was classifieds, replacing what was display ads with new models. And there are plenty of models out there.
The success of sites like Dig and Delicious, though, have also taught us perhaps that maybe the media brand itself isn't quite so important anymore. If we can forego the brand, put the editing out to the cloud and get back what more fits our needs, does that mean that a media brand now should be a little bit concerned about its own future and viability?
Well, certainly, but I don't think that one replaces the other. I think a conversation is one thing. I think, however, when I really want to go look at hard news, I go look for hard news. I don't necessarily look for commentary from my peers.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a place, and it's a matter of creating a reasonable expectation on behalf of the user of the brand promise, the editorial promise, the curatorial promise, the quality promise, and that's something that you may or may not get directly out of something like Dig, for example.
Where do you see the best innovation coming from then? Is it coming from the small startups that have nothing to lose, are coming out and challenging the world, or do you think there is room for really good innovation to come out of some of the bigger media companies?
Well, again, it depends on the media company,
Sure.
But generally speaking, startups are desperate, they're hungry, and they're motivated.
Mm-hmm.
And they can move quickly, they can innovate quickly. I had a wonderful moment when I started my company. We were looking for some angel funding. And this one guy who had a lot of money, he sent me to his lawyer. And the lawyer looked at the business plan and he said, "You guys have changed your business plan 3 times. And I tried to explain to him that in digital media, if you don't change your business plan every 6 months, there's really something wrong. But he didn't understand that.
What impact then do you think that the current economic crisis is having? You're feeling it a lot harder in the US than we are here. Touch wood, that will hopefully stay that way. But do you think that that's going to accelerate the changes, or do you think that actually pushes change backwards a little bit because the capital to evolve isn't there anymore?
Yeah, it's a big problem. We're seeing a lot of available funds in private equity deals. We're not seeing much in venture,
Mm-hmm.
on the venture side. So I think the deal strategy has to change a bit, or even be a hybrid model between something that has built-in revenue in terms of mergers and acquisitions around new capital models and venture models that have big upsides. But just coming in with a straight venture model, it's going to be next to impossible to get funding.
So if I can ask you to polish your crystal ball then and look maybe 5 years out from now, what do you think the attributes of a successful media business will be?
Wow, it's not going to be free as a business model, I can tell you that. It's not just about building audience,
Mm-hmm.
it's about building value. And I was so encouraged today. I think there was an amazing thing that we heard today in all of these speakers, which was they were all saying the exact same thing. And that means we've reached a maturity in this business where there are real, tangible strategies that you have to embrace. And although it's wonderful to go off in new directions and innovate and all of that, I think in this economic climate, it's important to pull back a little and focus on core business strategies, and they do exist.
Richard, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.